Um, Good morning, everyone. I hope you guys had a great week. We are very excited to welcome Helen Canoodle, Meredith Dean, Amanda Dawkins from Levine Children's Hospital, or LCH for short. Students, the whole purpose of these Friday experiences was just to expose you guys to other areas within the healthcare industry. So we are very excited to hear from Helen, Meredith, and Amanda because they each have different roles within LCH, and they're all unique and very important. And LCH has been named Best Children's Hospital by U.S. News and World Report for 13 years, and so we're very excited for you guys just to hear about how their roles attribute to that. There's going to be a time for a question and answer at the end of their presentation, so please take the time to ask some questions to learn more about them and their really cool careers. And so with that, I'm going to pass it off to Helen to start.
Great. Good morning. You'll probably hear a fire alarm going off in the background. Hopefully that will stop soon. I'm going to share my presentation with you and we'll get started. All right. So I have my chat box up. So if for some reason something goes out, you guys send me a message, or Abby, you can just chime in. But like Abby was saying, I'm called a certified child life specialist, and that is sort of it's a pretty small field in the healthcare industry. But for me, it has been just the perfect fit and a career that I have absolutely loved for over 14 years now. So I will jump in and tell you a little bit about the role of a child life specialist and then my journey to get here, especially here at LCH. So you'll see here, I called it the bubble lady. I think as a child life specialist, we often find ourselves explaining what we do in the healthcare field. It looks really different than some of the more well understood professions in the medical field. So I have been referred to as the bubble lady many, many times, and you'll find out a little bit more why. Sometimes it's the play lady or many other names, but my personal favorite is the bubble lady. And blowing bubbles in a COVID world is now non-existent, but that is something that as child life specialists, we often have or had bubbles on hand. So I don't know how familiar you guys are with Friends, but this meme, there's actually a person on Instagram called the iPad Lady, because that's another name that we get called a lot. And I like to think they're very affectionate terms, but this made me laugh a lot. So child life, what's that? As a child life specialist, our educational background consists of a bachelor's degree, typically in a field that is related. So it could be one of education, child development. There are very specific programs in certain universities that are child life programs that are much more, I guess, geared towards this field. But within that degree, at least 10 of your courses must consist of this list. So a course taught by a certified child life specialist, 2 child development courses, family systems courses, a course on play, loss and bereavement or death and dying, a course on research, and then the other ones are related content areas. Then I have bachelor's degree repeated. But basically, these cover the gamut of a lot of the content of what we do in our daily work here in the hospital. And as our field grows, the more consistent standards have grown as well. And so once you have completed, or sometimes in the context of your bachelor's degree, you would complete a 600-hour clinical internship, which is on site in a hospital. We offer one here at Levine Children's Hospital, and basically the way those hours line up, it's usually a full-time clinical internship for at least 3 months. with specific guidelines so that the program you're a part of, at least our internship here, is accredited through the national governing body called the Association of Child Life Professionals. And if you're interested in details around that, the website for our governing body is just childlife.org, but it's the ACLP. Once you've completed that clinical internship and all the requirements that are a part of that, you would sit for a certification exam. And to maintain certification, you have to continue either coursework or complete the exam every 5 years. So a little more detail about kind of what we do as certified child life specialists. The goal, or kind of what our aim is to look at what normal child development looks like in a normal context. So school, home, all of those things with peers. And then we look at hospitalization and illness and the impact that that would have on normal child development. And then we are sort of in that intersection between the two. And our goal is really to help those children who are experiencing illness or hospitalization to be able to cope and in a way that allows them to develop as normally as possible. There is a lot of information and a lot of studies on the impact that hospitalization, medical procedures, chronic illness, the impact that those things can have on a child, and then how those impacts can continue throughout their lifespan. So one thing just in particular I've learned recently is just that sometimes experiences with painful procedures in childhood have sort of an adverse effect on, if they're negative experiences, they are likely to cause that child to not be as compliant with preventive care later in life. And so we really want to meet those kids where they are and make these experiences that are necessary for them be something that they understand, something that they can cope with positively, so that in the long run, they really understand the value and the importance of their health care. So along those lines, we facilitate interventions that help children and their families cope well in their environment. So the 3 Ps, I came up with this. This is not a theory or anything like that, but the body of our work, the large majority of what we do exists in the world of play, which if you think about kids, there's a quote that says, "Play is the work of the child." And when children grow up, the way that they learn about their environment, the way that they understand the world is through play. That's how they explore things around them. It's how they understand relationships. It's how they develop, and it's how they learn resilience, or how they can potentially learn a sense of helplessness. So play is super, super important for the child. And for us, we use play a lot to, to do a variety of things. But I would say most importantly, just to normalize the hospital for a child. So whether it's an outpatient procedure and we're just bringing play into their clinic room to help them feel more at ease with strangers that they haven't met before, or whether this is a chronically ill child who is missing out on a lot of their normal activities. We help them to play so they can continue to develop here. We have play spaces that we sort of curate according to the patients that will be in those spaces. I know specifically we have a playroom here that includes like a child-sized CT scanner that a big Batman is made to go through. So kids can kind of get used to those things. It's sort of like a play kitchen, but in a hospital, it's a play CT scanner or a play OR bed and light. So things like that really help kids gain exposure and familiarity with things that typically would be overwhelming or intimidating for them. The other, preparation is a big thing that we talk about as child life specialists. And the value of preparing a child is really based around the idea that the fear of the unknown can often be greater than the fear of the known. So if we, in an age-appropriate way, can help children understand what to expect while they're here, with their medications or with the faces they'll see, the environment, the equipment, their treatment plan. If they can understand sort of ahead of time, it makes those obstacles a lot easier to manage when they come their way, because they knew about them ahead of time in a way that they could understand, and it doesn't take them by surprise. So the preparation, that kind of goes hand in hand with education. It's a big piece of what we do here. It kind of helps kids understand what is going on and why it's going on. I think oftentimes, as kids, they have things come at them, but they don't always get a chance to understand why. And if they understand why, that also encourages them to be more compliant and more a part of their own healthcare process. The next P, procedural support. So I think a lot of times that I mentioned earlier, the painful procedures and things like that, that patients go through while they're in the hospital. And there are a lot of ways that we can support children on the front end or even during a procedure to help them feel like they have a sense of control. We a lot of times will advocate for certain things that go hand in hand with child development in the context of a procedure. So for an infant or a toddler, you think about they are building attachment with their caregivers. So it makes a lot of sense that the caregiver would be the one that they see the most of in the middle of a painful or scary moment for them. So we'll do a lot of little nuanced things to make it so that a procedure is less intimidating for a child based on their child development, their level of development. And vice versa for a teenager. There may be times where in a procedure, they would feel a lot more confident if they could do it independently. They don't want so many people talking to them at the same time. They want their voice to be heard. So we may do different types of advocating in those settings. So all based in sort of the theories of child development. I like to think of it as us being like an interpreter for the child. So where a doctor may speak with a parent about a specific part of the procedure, we'll take that language and translate it to that child's level in terminology and explanations that really help them understand at their own level. So along those lines of the 3 Ps, some of the tools that we use that are, on the surface, they may appear to be really normal items. We really use them in strategic ways that would help a child cope for different goals. So the bubble lady, the play lady, the iPad lady, a lot of that comes into play with these tools that we use. We have a playroom stocked full of normal toys and games. We often have stuffed animals and blankets, not right now, but those are items that in a child's world are really normal and really comforting, and help them feel at ease. For preparation, we have a lot of age-appropriate teaching materials. We get really into just things that are out there. We actually are really fortunate to have a lot of resources here at LCH. So we have a lot of teaching tools created that are tailor-made for specific patient populations. So we have teaching dolls that have some of the surgical equipment that a lot of our chronic patients may see. We have a teaching doll that has a specific central line for chemo. So if a patient's going to have, if they've recently been diagnosed with a cancer diagnosis and they're going to need chemotherapy for years to come, we can actually show them what a central line looks like to give chemotherapy on a doll. before it's their turn to have it, and give them a chance to use it and play and understand a little bit more about it and ask their questions. And actually, we find that those tools are often really useful for parents or for siblings as well, because when you're not commonly exposed to the medical environment, those things are very foreign. So it's very helpful to have visual aid. We have a lot of books. I'm sure you may have seen back in the day things like Mr. Rogers in the hospital, or Franklin Goes to the Hospital, Sesame Street. But we have those for all ages that kind of help explain this environment. And we've also actually created some of our own education materials. We have part of our team really created this incredible resource that's like a virtual tour of every unit in the hospital where children go. And so it's on our iPads, and it's a 360 image that you can click on and move around and see whatever the unit is. So if a patient's going to go for an MRI, they can see the picture of our real MRI scanner, and they can move through the room and navigate to different areas and actually click on different buttons to hear what the MRI scanner sounds like, or see what it looks like when the patient may go through the scanner. So all of those things are really helpful to prepare children. And then we also, for procedural support, we have all kinds of bells and whistles and gadgets that we use that really help give children an alternative focus during a procedure. We often use bubbles specifically to encourage deep breathing. When they're having a procedure done, children tense up. We all do. It's natural. But that can cause your veins to constrict, or it can cause your muscles to tighten in such a way that a procedure may be more difficult or more painful. And so encouraging them to blow bubbles helps them focus on something else, but it also has that added result of relaxing some of the areas that are tense for them. Now, I should say also that what we do is it looks very different from unit to unit. So in our hospital, we have child life specialists in almost every area that children could go. So we have child life specialists in the emergency department. And what that looks like is different every day. But if there's a trauma that comes in, a child life specialist is at the head of the trauma bed, and they are right there. They're that patient's right-hand man the whole time, kind of walking them through what's going on. In the surgical unit, child life specialists meet with patients in more of a controlled environment, sometimes for a pre-op appointment, or maybe on the morning of surgery to kind of walk them through what to expect that day. We have child life specialists in outpatient clinics. They work with families over the long term of chronic care on an outpatient basis. And then we have child life specialists inpatient as well. So they get to know families who are spending the night here with us. For me, in my world of child life, I learned about child life sort of an inconvenient time, right as I had already decided where I was going to college. So the summer after my senior year, a friend of my older sister asked me what I wanted to do, and I told her I loved working with kids, but I didn't want to be a teacher. But I love psychology and biology, and she herself was in school to be a child life specialist, so she's the one who first introduced me to that. But I was already going to UVA, the University of Virginia, and they do not have a child life program. And so I kind of made my own way once I got there, and I majored in psychology and then also in Spanish. And at that point, that was really just sort of selfishly motivated because I wanted an excuse to study abroad while I was in college. But I had no idea how much that would pay off in the long run. So the majority of my coursework was around child psychology, and then I kind of handpicked courses in the nursing world and the biology and ethics world and things like that to kind of compile my list of coursework. And when I finished at UVA, at that point, I started to apply for internships. But right now, most of our interns complete their internship during their time in college. maybe as their last semester. But I, at that point, had very little guidance on child life, and being such a small field, I really just had to do my own research. And so I Googled child magazines, top children's hospitals, and that's how I picked where I wanted to apply for my internship, with the idea that if it's a big enough, good enough child life hospital, or excuse me, children's hospital, they probably have a more well-established child life program. So I ended up interning with the child life team at the Children's Hospital of Philadelphia. And I loved every bit of my experience there. It honestly wasn't until I got into my internship that I realized this is a real thing. This really happens. And as far as entering into the medical world, sort of on the front lines, I really was intimidated and thought I would not handle, I specifically thought burns and traumas would be the things that would kind of be the most overwhelming for me. And I think on my second day of my internship, I found myself in the middle of providing procedural support, observing my supervisor provide procedural support in a burn dressing change. And then later that day ended up in the emergency department for a patient who came in after a trauma. And of course, my stomach kind of hit the floor, but I found and continue to find in child life that, and I would imagine others in the medical field see this too, but when you have the privilege of walking through a hard situation with a family, you really often rise to the occasion and you realize what your role is, and you really focus on that and on helping that family get through what they need to get through, rather than focusing on the sort of the nitty-gritty of the scene around you, kind of what you see. So that really solidified my love of this field, and just finding the value and the privilege of getting to meet families where they are. So for me, once I moved to Charlotte for my job. And at the time, I mentioned I've been here for 14 years. What brought me here was really an excitement for growth. At the time, we were one floor in the adult hospital, the children's hospital was, and we had just broken ground on the building that we're in right now. So I knew that there was going to be a lot of change and a lot of growth in the world of pediatrics here, and I was really excited to be a part of that in the child life world. So I started out in our surgical unit and was on that unit the day we moved over. So I remember pushing beds across to the brand new hospital. I was there for 2.5 years, and then I moved inpatient and worked with our blood disorders and cancers on our inpatient unit for 7 years, I think, and then switched to our outpatient oncology and hematology clinic for a year before my current role was created. And my role right now is fairly unique to the child life world, but I'm essentially like an assistant manager for our team here. We have a really large team here, and then a smaller team up at the Jeff Gordon Children's Center. So our manager manages both teams, and then I help administratively here as well. So one thing that I really, really love about working at Atrium Health is the mission and vision. And I think as a child life specialist, we really, really get to live that out. I think it's pretty amazing to be in a field that you feel like you get to do something that you're really made to do. So I think along the lines of, health, hope, and healing, I feel like the goals of child life really ask for you to get to know a patient's story in the context of their family and their friends and their current situation where they are here. And our goal is to help them cope with whatever's on their plate. But really, to do that, you kind of have to get to know what their plate looks like. So what is their original kind of baseline? And then our interventions and our treatment plans are catered to each patient in that context. So I think it gives us the opportunity to think about the big picture of what their health really looks like on an individual basis. what their hopes are, and so how we can really help meet those, and then what it would really look like for each patient and family for us to bring healing. So I think it's really neat to think outside of the box. So obviously there are some very clear medical parameters for what healing would look like for each of our patients, but I think we look at sort of the things that surround that patient and what all is involved in caring for the whole child. And then along the lines for all, that's one of my favorite parts about our mission. I think in the context of healthcare, we're given the privilege of really getting closely connected with patients and families that we otherwise would never cross paths with out in the real world. And I mentioned earlier that I majored in Spanish and chose it sort of for selfish reasons, but I never would have imagined the impact that that would have on my career and my own personal experience. So having the ability to communicate with a lot of the Spanish-speaking families that we have here has really opened my eyes to some really incredible stories, some beautiful stories of health, hope, and healing in the lives of those families. So I love having that exposure. And then our vision to be the first and best choice for care. I think in the 14 years that I have been here, I've been really amazed to see the growth that has happened from the day we broke ground to where we are now, and the advanced level of treatment that we provide all throughout the hospital. And specifically for me, I experienced it in the world of hematology and oncology, and that we are just growing and growing at that area here. So lastly, my advice to you guys, being where you are, it sounds like y'all are juniors and seniors in high school. And that's right about the time that I learned about child life. And so I think my advice would really just be to ask questions, learn about what's out there, but not only what's out there, but what's inside of you and kind of where your giftings are and how that would apply to what's out there. And there's so much, specifically with child life being such a small field, there are so many opportunities in healthcare that are somewhat unknown. And so it's really, I have been fortunate enough to have a career that I love and sort of fits me and my giftings well. So I would wish that on everyone if possible. And you know, if it takes making your own path, finding your own coursework, figuring that out, that's it's worth it. But I think on this side of things, 14 years in, I would say it's also very worth it to be practical and make wise choices about something that you can do long term. There's so much value in that. So it's worth being thorough about that. And I think the biggest thing now out in the world is doing your best to make relationships and build connections where those people can really help connect you. People who know you can help connect you with those opportunities. And don't be afraid of having a conversation, even if it feels weird, or picking up the phone and calling someone to ask them questions. I think those are the things that lead to the fields that are the good fits for you. Any questions, thoughts? I think we have like a minute till it's someone else's turn.
Actually, Helen, I have a question. This is Donna.
Hi.
What kind of, have you ever had to deal with any pushback from parents in regards to, you know, talking with the children about the procedures and stuff, that they maybe wanted to keep it more not as involved?
Yes, absolutely. That's actually a question we ask when we interview candidates, because it's assumed that someone's had an experience like that. And I think, like I mentioned, we really want to function in what is normal for that patient and family. And so we work almost as much with parents as we do with the patient themselves to learn their context and how their family functions. But I think so getting to know them and respecting their values is really important. But on the other end of that, knowing that that family has probably not had experience in the healthcare field, and we may have some insight, some guidance, some wisdom, having seen a lot of children cope in the hospital. And so we really try to have a conversation with them where we validate where they're coming from, learn more about where they're coming from first, and then also say, given my experience, what I've seen with children, what I know of children, you know, let me make these suggestions, or coming up with a creative solution that meets both sides of that story. A lot of times we teach parents, like giving them the vocabulary or the words to talk to their child. Or we may give them certain resources to use. Or we may role play with them, like, here's what I would say. How does that sound to you? Can we say that to your child? Because a lot of times, I mean, I think it's an excellent thing for a parent to kind of want to filter what's coming at their child and be their child's advocate. So we kind of welcome those conversations. And we've seen more and more, I think, as our culture becomes more open about certain conversations around healthcare and things like that, there's more of a receptive mentality rather than like an anxious or sort of more pushback.
Great. I want to, Anusha raised her hand. I want to make sure she gets her question asked. So we'll end on Anusha, and then Meredith, you can begin your presentation. So Anusha, if you want to unmute yourself and ask.
I just wanted to ask, normally how many children on average do you work with daily?
Ooh. I didn't quite hear it.
You were breaking up.
Okay. Yeah.
No, why don't you type your question in the chat, because I think your connection isn't as good.
So her question, how many children on average do I work with daily? So I think that goes back to the point that what our days look like really depends on the type of unit we work on. So in our emergency department, right now we're seeing fewer patients, surprisingly, but they, you know, in an average day see somewhere of 75 or 100 patients a day. Now, our specialists see the amount of children that would come in between their 12-hour shift. In an outpatient clinic, there are hundreds of kids that come through, and our role, we couldn't possibly meet them all where they are on that day, but we prioritize a lot. So we kind of understand what children are coming for and who would have the highest needs on that day. In a surgical unit right now, they're having 30 to 40 patients come through for anesthesia a day. And so we do our best to meet every child who comes in. Obviously, we miss some who come right at the exact same time. But one of the things I do really love about Child Life is that we sort of are forming individualized plans for each patient. And so one person's plan may take a really long time that day, and one person's may just be a, hey, how are you doing? What do you need today? So it really depends on kind of the needs of the unit that day. And most of our inpatient units have 24 beds. So we have usually one specialist per unit per day.
Well, I just want to thank you, Helen, for taking your time to just share your passion and just your experience with Child Life and give these students some encouragement and a little insight into a really cool career opportunity and unique one within healthcare. So thank you.
Yeah.
Meredith, if you want to take the floor, we are excited to hear from you.
Thanks so much, Abby. I'm so excited I get to go after Helen too, because I could not do my job without Child Life, and they are absolutely incredible. So that was perfect to be able to go from Helen to Seacrest Studios. So first off, I'd love to know who I'm talking to. So if you guys could just go ahead and let me know what your main interest is going forward, maybe a dream job or a field you want to go into. So just go ahead and type that in the box for me. And then the other thing I'll get you all to do is Abby sent you links to different videos. So from what I understand, you guys can't see the videos or you can't hear them well if I'm playing them here. So it would be great if you guys could just pull them up on your end, and I'll tell you when to watch. Okay, we got medical oncology, oncology pharmacy, great. Gynecology, wonderful. Neonatal nurse practitioner, ER physician. Look at all these genius people. I love it. Keep hearing. I want to hear more. Okay, physician assistant cardiology, surgery biological researcher, pediatrician, neonatologist. Hey, Michaela. Michaela already came to visit too. I think Prashant did as well. Yep, neonatologist. Wonderful. Well, number one, you all are smarter than me. You guys are going to be going to school that I did not go to. My background is digital and broadcast journalism. So I run the radio and TV station that's located in the lobby of Levine Children's. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here. So, load in. All right. Can everyone see my screen? Wonderful. Okay, we'll pull this up. So I'm program coordinator for Seacrest Studios, and a lot of people, the first thing they wonder is, what is a radio and TV station doing inside of a children's hospital? And I'll get into that in a second, but I want to give you guys my career path because it's very unconventional for a hospital setting. But I went to University of Georgia. Like I said, I majored in digital and broadcast journalism, did new media. I'm really into coding, really into video games. And then also I thought that I wanted to be a reporter for war zones, probably for CNN. And it ended up that I also wanted to be able to tell people's stories, but also uplift and empower other people. And I love that I found my dream job right now where I'm able to stay in media and broadcast, but do something that's so beyond me every day and be with these kids and these families and share part of their story like Helen was talking about. I worked at Tale de Langue, so I speak French. I used to work for a travel agency when I was in high school there. I used to translate between American and French students, worked for Fox 5 Atlanta and with the investigative team. So I had undercover cameras and was busting the bad guys in business. Then moved to CNN, so worked with producers, reporters from all over the world. And that was an incredible experience to see their ways of journalism, what they're allowed to show on TV, what they can't, and then also what our standards of journalism are. Then the following year, once I graduated from University of Georgia, I worked for Inside Edition. I was Deborah Norval's executive assistant. So probably none of you guys know who Deborah Norval is, but some of the older people who are on the call will know who she is. But got her ready for the Emmys, the Golden Globes, did her website, took her to the Today Show or Wendy Williams, wherever she needed to be that day, and prepped her for all those interviews. So a lot of admin work. Then I also wanted to help my family's nonprofit. So I built girls' schools, wells, and clinics in Western Kenya and work. So most of my children experience was actually with mostly Kenyan children, mostly orphans. And then through all these jobs I've been talking about, my online portfolio, meredithdean.com, and then my social media is what helped me get each of these jobs going forward. So some advice I really want to give you guys is focus on building your LinkedIn, focus on building and for you guys, I know you're going into a different field, you're not going into media, but you need to have a strong digital presence because during your interview process, people are looking at you. They are finding you online before they're finding you in person. And you want to make sure that the person you are online represents who you are in person. And we're seeing even more now how you have to be more careful with social media, even with factual information that's out there versus not factual information, and people's opinions on masks versus not. Wear your mask. So the other thing is, I thought, man, okay, if this is helping me get all my jobs, these different places, I'm going to start my own business. So built the Dean's List. So that's where a lot of my career advice will come from as we're going through the presentation. But then I heard about this job with Ryan Seacrest Foundation from someone who went to University of Georgia. Her name is Mamie, and she was running the studio before I was, and she now runs the Nashville studio. But she sent my website straight to my current boss, Clay, who's the administrative director of the hospital, and obviously filled out the regular application, but he felt like he had already known me before I even came in for my in-person interview. And about 7 interviews later, ended up in Charlotte, North Carolina. So that's a little bit about me, but we're going to talk about Seacrest Studios. So, like I said, people always are wondering, as soon as they come into the hospital, they go, what is this thing that is here? They think that it costs money to go in, or some people think if they walk in, they're going to get famous just from getting on the mic. But we are a closed circuit radio and TV station. So it goes out on channel 99. It's only accessible within the Children's Hospital. We're looking at ways that we can end up streaming it to the ED as well, but it's just on channel 99. So each of the kids can call down like a regular radio station to 6 Ryan 67926 and request songs. We'll talk about our VIP pass that we do, but there are no treatments whatsoever inside of the studio. No doctors unless they're coming in for doing something fun and dancing with us or doing an interview. And then we could not get patients down there unless we had child life or know which patients are even feeling well enough to be able to do something like this. And right now we can't have any patients in Seacrest Studios because of coronavirus. But we definitely depend on Child Life to help us with identifying patients that feel well enough from their bed to call in or participate in intern shows. But there are 10 studios across the country. The 11th studio is being built right now. I run the Charlotte one. There's another one in Philly at CHOP, in Nashville at Vanderbilt Children's. Then we have one in Colorado, Orange County, all over the place. So if anyone's interested in looking at those other studios, you can go check out ryanseacrestfoundation.org. The other thing is that we're bringing prizes up to rooms, which is really fun for the kids. Like Helen said, in the playroom, there's a ton of different prizes. So we will get prizes from them. So this is a little bit about what I do as well in the studio. So I manage all the studio programming, manage the studio Tuesday through Friday, 10 to 5 is when we're open. Also, I manage the team of 14 interns every semester, and interns are who help create and produce all of our content. So we're constantly interacting with patients, and we're visiting all the floors to encourage participation. We're interviewing celebrities. So we've had an influx of celebrities since coronavirus, because we can't have actual visitors come into the studio, but they can all participate via Zoom. So we've had a ton of virtual celebrity visits, from Anne Hathaway to Jack Black, Jason Derulo, Tiffany Haddish. I mean, it goes on, but we've had a lot because now they're not, getting on a plane to come visit us. They're able to just be with us via Zoom. And then we're also a host and hostess for children and then families too. It's not even just the patient or the family, but it's also, we're taking care of the entire family, the siblings as well. And you can imagine when siblings are, sitting there with their sick brother or sister, a lot of times they don't have anything to do, and Child Life helps a lot with that. And then we do as well. So booking that time in the studio, or right now during coronavirus, just calling in and participating via Zoom or on an iPad. So we work with a ton of different departments in the hospital to make sure that things will work, and then also identify those patients. So Child Life, music therapy, Arts for Life, our administration teams, donations and events. Obviously events are paused right now, but we even bring in volunteers from the community to do bingo with us. So we might have Wells Fargo one Wednesday afternoon, or this afternoon we have a ton of pageant queens from all over the country that are help us with Dancing with Seacrest Idol. Also work with marketing, because we're sending a lot of content to our social media teams, and then also the Ryan Seacrest Foundation. So I would love for you all to go ahead and look at your list of videos, and the list of videos that you have here. Hold on, I'm going to stop sharing. Go look at the list of videos that says celebrity visit and watch the first minute for me. So once you guys are done, let me know in the comments that you're done watching it. But celebrity visit, and it is Ed Sheeran in Colorado. And it'll give you a good idea of what it was like before coronavirus for celebrity visits. But the kids are the ones that lead the interview and get to ask the questions. The main male voice you'll hear is Chris Coleman, who has my same job in Colorado. But enjoy.
Students, if you're wondering where to access those videos, it's included in the meeting agenda I attached to the Outlook meeting planner. So you can go through Outlook and access the attached agenda to this meeting.
Just remember, you don't have to watch the whole thing, just literally the first minute.
Hey, Meredith, I just checked the Outlook invite and I realized that yesterday it didn't load properly, so I just uploaded it. So maybe move on and hopefully the next video the students can access it.
Sounds good. No worries. All right, so we're going to switch on over here back to our presentation. All right, so some of the things that we do, I'm going to go into the events that we had before coronavirus. So we do dog shows. We get to work with our pet therapy teams too. And that's super fun. You know, Child Life and a lot of our nurses, they're able to bring down a lot of patients and participate in the shows. And I swear we get more people for these dog shows than we do even Selena Gomez or someone who's really famous. So the dog shows are amazing. We have our Halloween dog show where all the dogs and the owners will dress up. Then we have our Howl-a-Day dog show, and then everyone dresses up for that as well. But we also have weekly activities that are outside of our intern shows, and they do their shows for an hour. But story time we do on Tuesdays, bingo Wednesdays at 3. I Heart Art, we work with Sarah Ness from Arts for Life and do an art project on Thursdays at 12. And then Seacrest Idol, we are dancing and singing and doing almost a karaoke show on Fridays at 3. So lots of fun opportunities for our patients to get involved and families as well. I mean, we love when even parents get really involved. All right, so let's move on to the next thing. So what we also do at the rest of the hospital is we can work on these VIP passes, and we even encourage teammates to do this as well to win prizes. But each of the patients can play a game. So we have games on our computer or physical games that are in the studio. They can perform. So whatever their special talent is, whether they can play ukulele or they love singing, or maybe they just want to throw out a little whoa, go for it. We love it. That counts as performing. And then requesting, they would request a song from either the studio or from their room by calling 6 Ryan. And then also hosting, they can host a show about My Little Pony or rap about their family or whatever it is that they want to host a show about. One patient who loves to do a horse show, and she would bring in all of her horses and we'd go through each of them and what the breed is. And it was just wonderful. So like I said, work with Child Life to identify those patients that obviously feel well enough or interested, and also kind of figure out a little bit of what their background is so we can understand what we're getting into. And then the 4th floor uses Seacrest Studios all the time for rehab. So it's one of my favorite things, but we just did a joke show with one of our patients. And what they did is they distracted her by telling these jokes, and we had her on the iPad and put her up on channel 99. We distracted her to walk and tell these jokes to help her walk again. And so you don't realize when you're having fun, you know, when you're working out or when you're trying to make use of your legs again. And then, you know, even our patient that we have here, we have permission to have his picture on here because of our photo releases. But also notice her nose is out. This was before coronavirus, and she should have her nose, though, under her mask. But Evan over here, who has cystic fibrosis, he loved the equipment and was learning about all the technology in there. So was using the TriCaster, our SAS audio console, and he even taught us stuff. I mean, he's only 12 at that time, but he taught us how to use the equipment with some functionalities that we didn't even know about. And this became something that got him out of his room, and he just had such a blast. But also just gives children tasks so they feel like they're really a part of the studio. We've even had patients that became interns afterwards, which is just amazing to me that, you know, they get better and they want to give back by becoming an intern. And it's also just a cool place to hang out. So that's really good for our teenagers. They just want to hang out with other young people, and kind of, it's almost like Club Seacrest, just a cool place to be. And then also, you know, they don't have to worry about any treatments in Seacrest Studios. So we can't have any doctors come in to check on anything, no nurses. We obviously want to have, we want the staff to know that they're down there, and they have to have a play passport to come down. But we just want it to be a fun place for them. So it's also a big confidence builder. This one is big for me and why I wanted to have this job. But my whole mission in life is to empower other people and empower everyone. So creating confidence in kids who are really, really shy at the beginning. And then by the time they leave the studio, they're excited and revved up about life, and they want to be singing, or they, you know, the one I told you about that was rapping. The mother didn't even know that her child could rap, and he had done this whole song for her. And it was, we were all just crying our eyes out. And you know, it's a beautiful place. I cry twice a day, probably, from happiness. And I think it's an incredible, empowering place. So next video, if you guys could go look at this. This is the Bringing Light series that marketing did. So go look at, I think it's, the title of it would be the coordinator perspective or supervisor video. So if you guys could watch that, you can watch it the whole way through. And then let me know when you're done. Everyone has access, right, Abby? Can't hear you, sorry.
All right, muted. Students, please let me know if you cannot access the meeting agenda through Outlook.
And if you can't do it, don't worry, we will continue on. And let us know when you're done. Wonderful. See, a lot of y'all are already done, so we'll go ahead and move on. But that is one of my favorite videos with some patients that mean a whole lot to me. So I'm glad that you could kind of see a little inside look at what the studio is, and then also what it does for patients and families. So thank you guys for watching that for me. So we'll keep going on with the presentation here. Okay. All right, can everyone see screen? We're good? Okay, great. So another thing that everyone gets to learn is broadcasting equipment. And this is also for interns and patients and families. So it's pretty neat that all of this does exist in the Children's Hospital. A whole lot of cleaning involved too, to make sure that everything is nice. So if you guys are interested in our production internship going forward, we do accept juniors and seniors even in high school that are extremely emotionally intelligent and also are able to learn very, very quickly. So morning shift, they would get here 9:45, leave by 1. Afternoon shift, 1:45, leave by 5. And they would be doing their own show, and then pretty much the same things I told you about my job, but interns are creating their own hour-long show about whatever it is they love, but also our patients would love. And then they also would only come 1 to 2 shifts per week. So you don't have to come 9 to 5 Monday through Friday. It's very feasible with your own schedule with school. The other thing is I always tell my interns, think before you speak. I think this is good really for all humans in general, but is it true, helpful, inspiring, necessary, and kind? Think. Next up, for sake of time, we're not going to watch this, but if you want to learn more about the internship, you can watch the recruitment video from Scotty here. Here are some really important qualities, I think, in an intern. At least for me, this is what I hire based on. If you hate kids, probably shouldn't work here. Same with child life. So definitely loving children is actually number one, but emotional intelligence, you were listening to some of the things that Helen said about even dealing with people who've gone through trauma. How can you go from one patient who's dealt with a lot of trauma to having fun with a patient sibling, just really quickly going from one thing to another? Do you have that emotional intelligence to be kind of like a chameleon and fit these different needs of children and families? Also being open-minded. Just like Atrium Health's motto, but, we give care to all, and making sure that one, you love other cultures and languages and appreciate everyone's differences. That's just, a no-go, or obviously something that you have to work for Seacrest Studios, at least, is being open-minded. But if you're interested in being a spring 2021 intern, we're already about to accept our fall interns, but you could send a resume and cover letter by November 1st to us at seacreststudios@atriumhealth.org. Some more career advice. This is coming from the Dean's List side of me, which is my 5 to 9 once I get off of Seacrest. But create your digital brand. Maybe you don't necessarily need your website, but you do need a very strong LinkedIn. No matter what you go into, when people Google you, you want to show up with really good results. Knowing a little something about everything. Don't be that person when you're having a conversation with someone, you tune out and your eyes start glazing over. You never know what you're going to learn from every single person you meet in life. Make sure you network. My challenge to you, this is my the Dean challenge here, but reach out to one new person a day. It's going to open up an entire world for you. And I love that Michaela and there's another wonderful gentleman that came in from the team that's listening right now. But, just shadowing and meeting new people is going to really open up a lot of doors for you. Help your search engine optimization, improve that. You could even create your own blog talking about your experience, this summer, anything else that you're doing. Clean up your social media. My job, well, what I like to tell people is, what would Marty do? Marty is my grandmother, and if Marty can't see it, it probably shouldn't be put out there. And if any of you guys want to connect on Instagram, @Marinator, don't think it's weird. It's fine. You guys can definitely connect. Negotiating your salary. This one's really big once you have graduated and you're looking for your full-time job. I know it's probably a little bit different when it comes to the medical field, but especially women and then women of color, make sure you're advocating for yourself. That one's really big. Educate others and educate yourself. So you can use Duolingo, Lynda, Mint, New Old Stamp. Duolingo helps you learn new languages. Lynda is now LinkedIn Learning. You can learn literally anything you want. If you want to be a podcaster and also be a gynecologist, go learn how to be a podcaster with LinkedIn Learning. And then Mint teaches you skills just with personal finance. Doesn't matter what you go into, you need to understand personal finance, understand a little bit about taxes, and then also empowering others. That is my main thing in life, is how can we uplift other people and just do the same, because words really matter. And we're seeing that especially now in this climate. What are you doing to support other people and walking a mile in their shoes? So that's my little TED talk for you. But if you want to watch Lollipop Moment from TEDx in Toronto by Drew Dudley, changed my life. It's wonderful. So I think we maybe have time for one question, but thank you guys so much.
Yes, we can probably take one question. And as always, if you have any questions, since we run out of time, you can email me and I'll pass it on to Meredith and we can get all your questions answered. So if anyone has a question, go ahead and raise your hand. If not, oh.
Hi, I'll ask a question. This is Aria.
Hi, how's it going?
It's good. How are you?
Good.
I wanted to ask about the children and the impact that COVID has had on them. So I know before COVID, you had all these shows that they can come and watch. So how has COVID impacted your kind of work and also the children?
So just like everyone else in the world, we pivoted as fast as we could. So, luckily Seacrest Studios was actually made for something like this technically, because we send all of our content out to the patients' rooms through Channel 99. So, we're already still doing all of our intern shows. I actually started, because our interns couldn't come in anymore, we did virtual shows over Zoom, and they were able to call in. We still broadcasted everything up to the kids. Kids could still call down from their rooms, and that VIP pass I talked about, they're still able to do all of those things from their rooms, request a song, host their own show where they'd have an iPad. And then also we got more celebrities in all the time. They weren't traveling to get there anymore. They were doing Zoom visits. So luckily, we pivoted very, very well. We even still brought in, we are still bringing in volunteer groups via Zoom or Microsoft Teams. So we just learned to pivot as fast as we could. And my motto is don't let anything slow you down or slow your role pretty much with work. Obviously things look different and we're being as safe as possible. And, you hear about all these health clearances and getting your temperature checked every day and wearing masks all day. I don't even notice my mask anymore, wearing it all the time. Obviously I'm at home, that's why I'm not wearing my mask. But yeah, COVID impacted everyone. And I know it affects people a lot more upstairs. And I'm really grateful even to still have a job, and the Atrium Health really has been taking care of their employees as much as they can.
Well, thank you, Meredith, for sharing all your great advice and your experience. It was really fun learning about Seacrest Studios. I didn't know all that information until now. So I'm sure the students appreciate it as well. But yeah, thank you once again for taking time out of your day and just sharing your passion with us.
No problem. Hope to connect with all.
Yes. And now we get to hear from Amanda.
Hey everyone, can y'all hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So I don't have a PowerPoint. I just have me. I am a registered nurse. My current title is I'm a master's prepared neonatal clinical nurse specialist. I just graduated in May 2020, and I sit for my board exam because this position is one of three advanced practicals. The other are, four, I'm sorry. The other are nurse practitioner, nurse anesthetist, clinical nurse specialist, and I think there's one more, midwives. So anyway, that's where I am now currently in my career. I work currently as the pediatric vascular access team. I work in the whole Living Children's Hospital, accessing patients with IVs, plain regular IVs, midlines, which are a longer dwelling type catheter that doesn't go past the shoulder. And we are hopefully going to start putting in central lines, PICC lines. They're just a longer IV that goes further into the center of the body in the larger vasculature. So that is where I am currently. What brought me to this point, I'd say when I got out of high school, I got my first degree in animal sciences and majored in animal husbandry. And after that, I got married and went to nursing school at Carolina's College of Health Science, and they're affiliated with Atrium Health. At that time, they did not offer a bachelor's program. I think most nursing schools now you go through, they do have a bachelor's program, and most nurses are coming out of school with bachelor's programs. So I started in the neonatal progressive nursery as a new grad, and that is a step-down unit from the neonatal ICU. I then went on to transfer to the neonatal ICU, where I spent 7 years at Atrium Health doing that, and went on to become the clinical educator at a different hospital for the neonatal ICU, and started on my master's. My passion is neonatology and vascular access. I don't know which I love more. They are both wonderful careers. The administrative work that I do in my role is I work on the schedule, make sure that we have adequate coverage. I do the data collection, and that's more in line with the role of a clinical specialist. We do a lot of data-based practice work, so I do that for our team to make sure that we're keeping up with the Joneses and doing everything that we need to do to be evidence-based, and that we're preventing central line, preventing any kind of line infections, any kind of sepsis. We are very stressful. It's very stressful for the children, so we do work close with child life specialists because they are getting poked with the needle. So the child life specialist comes and helps us by distracting and teaching the children, you know, what is about to happen, to kind of soothe them and calm their anxieties. Let's see, I had a couple of questions that they asked me. My connect to purpose is always do the next right thing whenever I don't know what to do in any given situation at the bedside. I'll always try and look for the next right thing and take a breath and, you know, step back and look at the whole situation. Is this too stressful for the patient? How's the family handling us being in here trying to obtain access on their child? Also, probably I was asked what was the most interesting thing I've seen. I've seen a lot of interesting things over the past 10 years as a bedside nurse, but probably the most amazing thing is on pediatric cardiac surgeries. Some of them, the babies mostly, they leave the incision open and put this film over after they do the open heart surgery and let it stay open for swelling for a couple of days, and you can see the pericardium of the heart beating, and it's just a thin film that goes over their chest. And I think that's probably one of the most amazing things that I've seen before they close the babies up, and they usually do that within a couple of days. Other than that, as a nurse, my goal is to care for you and to make sure that you're healthy and healing, and to educate patients as best I can so they can have a smooth stay in the hospital while they're there. And that's all I have.
That's great. Thank you, Amanda. Do you have any questions about just how she got into her role, more details or anything? You can raise your hand and put in the chat. While you're doing that, Amanda, I actually have a question. I couldn't quite hear you a ton at the beginning, but I heard that you just graduated, and I believe you said you got your master's. What made you pursue, you said there was, I think you said there's 4 different areas. And what made you pursue the degree that you got in the specialty that you're in?
Well, my primary career has revolved around neonates, so in neonatology, and I started out in the neonatal nurse practitioner program. And when I got to clinicals, I learned that it was not the program for me. It's not what I expected. What I had seen as a bedside nurse that I thought the nurse practitioner role was not what it turned out to be for me. So I spoke with the director of the program, and we came together and decided, you know, that the clinical nurse specialist was a better fit for me in neonatology, and that I am more research driven, more evidence-based practice, and I'm a numbers person, and I like to see the progress. I like to be the change. So that was how I got to be in the neonatal CNS role for my career choice. And then the other three I said were nurse practitioners, which I've just spoke about, and midwife and nurse anesthetist. Those were the other three that are advanced practice RNs.
Great, thank you.
Mhm.
So, Lee, you have a question?
I raised my hand. I don't know if you said me, but hi, my name is Sydney, and I just wanted to know, what do you think is most beneficial about your job, and do you feel that it has given you a sense of accomplishment? I guess, like, everybody has a job that they want to help other people. So do you feel as if that is what you are in now?
That's a great question. I absolutely feel a reward, and I feel that I'm allowed to be part of my patient's life. I come in at a very critical time in their life when they're usually very sick. Their parents are looking for answers. They don't know how to cope with, what their child is going through. And it's very rewarding to me to be able to help that family on their journey to health. And I have made two friends in particular that wouldn't mind me talking at all about them. They were both mothers in the NICU, and both their children are now 7 years old, and we have remained close friends, had other pregnancies, birthday parties. I've been a part of their life for the past 7 years, and I wouldn't trade it for the world. And it was because their babies were in the NICU with me, and I was their primary nurse. And so it's very rewarding. I can't think of anything else that I could do, that could be as rewarding as a nurse. Does that answer your question?
Yes.
Good. Anybody else? I would recommend for sure, now that schools are mostly bachelor's driven, to go ahead and get your bachelor's if you go to nursing school. It was a lot. I got my associates in nursing, and then I had to find a bachelor's program. I went to University of South Carolina, Mary Black School of Learning, and then I went to East Carolina for my master's. And so it's taken me 10 years to complete my journey in education as a nurse, when if I would have done it when I was younger, it would have been a lot less on my plate, I would say, for sure.
It looks like Sydney has a question.
Okay.
No, I don't. My hand was already raised. I'm sorry.
Well, that's it. I'm good to go. How about you, Abigail? All is well?
Yeah. If no one else has any other questions, I want to thank you, Amanda, for taking your time to share about your job with these students, and just why you love it so much, and just giving them advice on if they're interested in pursuing a similar nursing career with children. So thank you.
Y'all have a good day.
Yes. With that, you too. With that, students, it concludes this Friday's experience. Again, if you have any more questions, you can email me, and I'll make sure I get it out to the right person. But thank you, everyone, for joining. I hope you guys have a great weekend, and we will see you next Friday. Bye.
Bye, Miss Abby.
Bye.